Welcome to Earth, a Love Story, and welcome to Sex, Love, and Other Drugs, Part 2. I originally wrote down some ideas for this episode while I was at the hot springs a week or so ago, and then I recorded several voice notes on my way home, since you all seemed to enjoy my road trip episode. And I'm happy with my original ideas and what I said in those voice notes, and I am including those in this podcast. But it didn't feel complete. I wasn't able to put it out. And honestly, a lot has happened between then and now. So I'm adding more to this from a new seat, a new frequency, and a new knowing in my bones that has been so delicious and exciting that I can't not share it. First, a foundational thing under the thing story that I didn't realize I had. This very deep wound, this very hidden and tender place inside of me that felt ashamed and unsafe. And somehow, through a series of synchronicities and somatic releases and dreams, and mostly help from another brave, kind human, this story was unearthed. If you've listened to or read my book, you know that I grew up in the middle of nowhere with back-to-the-lander hippie parents in a little valley, and the nearest neighbor was a mile away as the crow flies. Well, the nearest little boy was about 6 miles away, almost exactly my age, and probably because my mom and his mom didn't know any other moms out there in the middle of nowhere, we had play dates together, starting from before we could walk. And as we grew up in proximity to each other, it was sort of understood between him and me and everyone who knew us, between our parents and our families, that we were going to end up together. It was lightly joked about in the families, and it was wildly, beautifully lived through our little bodies. And this was well before any sexual awakening happened. We were 2 or 3 years old, and then 7 or 8 years old, and 10 or 11 years old. And through each passage of our little childhood milestones, we just knew. It was the story of us. We both had horses and rode together, and for some reason we were always racing. And we were always having foot races as well as horse races. And he was taller than me and long-legged and much faster. And he always won our foot races, even though I ran flat out as fast as I could and pumped my arms and lungs. It did not matter. He would speed away from me like a cartoon roadrunner and leave me in a literal cloud of dust. But I was a better rider than him, better with horses, and my horse could beat his horse. I'm remembering now that they were brothers, those horses. We bought them from the same little ranch down the road, and they were brothers. And my horse could beat his horse when we raced flat out, so it evened out. I remember when he gave me his soccer picture and wrote on the back in little kid handwriting, "Love you." And there were no phones and no way to connect easily, so we wrote each other letters, big, grand love letters about the kind of life we would have together. Again, this was pre-sexually awakened bodies, and it was not about that at all. We just loved each other, and we knew we would get married, and we would live in the country and have horses and dogs and chickens, and that's just the way that it was. Until one day, when I was staying at his house, we often had sleepovers at each other's houses. He sat on his bunk bed and told me we couldn't write letters anymore because his mom had found them, and his parents had told him that it was getting too serious and it wasn't okay what we were doing. And I can still feel the pit of shame and confusion in my stomach. I didn't understand, and I remember being angry too. But we stopped writing the letters. And we stopped loving each other so much. And I adjusted myself to a world where it was clearly not safe to love that big and freely. It was embarrassing, I was ashamed. And no shade to his parents, right? Who knows what we were writing to each other? I don't. So we went on growing up and kind of separated, saw each other less and less after that. But we did go on one date in high school. We went dancing at this bar outside of city limits that would let kids in. They would just be like, don't drink. And we'd be like, okay, because we weren't there for that anyway. So we went dancing and we played pool. And when he dropped me off, we made out like mad people in his Toyota 4Runner. And then we didn't speak to each other the next day. We were both shy and awkward. And eventually I knew that he was leaving for college soon. And a couple weeks after graduation, I found a tiny note with his tiny, precise handwriting tucked underneath my windshield wiper of my car. I'm in town tonight, it said, if you want to come over. It had been written 2 days before, and I had missed it, and he was gone. And I can still imagine him sitting alone, waiting for me to show up or not, or at least waiting for me to call him on the landline. But I never showed, and he went off to college, and eventually so did I, and you know the rest of my story. The rest of his is that, actually the rest of his I don't know that well. What I do know is that he met his wife and had 2 kids and moved away. And for years, I would dream about him, dream that we were riding on the road together or walking from my house to his house, or that he'd built a house and I was going to move into it with him. Sad story. Good story. And until this series of synchronicities and somatic releases and forgotten memories came up, I didn't realize that I was still carrying that little girl who loved so freely and who was told that it wasn't okay. And like with all things in our shadow worlds, just seeing it and speaking it to a safe person was enough to alchemize it and return the psychic energy that had been holding it to me. And I reclaimed my love, the bigness of my love, the purity and innocence and fearlessness, and that little girl doesn't have to hold that anymore. And now she's on a journey. I don't know what's going to happen with her, but she feels really good to be freed up from that. She was holding it a long time. So that's how big I want to love. And that's actually how big I do love. That is the blueprint of me before I was told that it was wrong. The blueprint of the loving part of me, the innocent, big, fearless part of me. The part that loves because it feels good as it moves through my body. It feels good to be love. I am nourished with its energy as it moves through me. And speaking of the body, it's been necessary in the past to shut the body down because of very real dangers that happened long ago, and the idea in the body that there could be some very real dangers yet to come. So I can think love and construct love and grasp and push away and need and not need love, but I couldn't feel love. I couldn't feel love moving through my body in a way that felt safe. It felt like fear. It was too big, too blissful, too joyful, too dangerous, too powerful, honestly, too free. And I didn't even know this, but I needed to touch bottom. I needed to die and not die over and over and over again. And then I needed to learn to do it consciously and on purpose, to go down to the underworld and Nana's descent and feel grief and let it stretch and shatter and rearrange me inside of a bigger container that I didn't even know was there. And I had to do all of that through my body. Less doing, actually, more feeling. I had to feel all of that through my body, through my stomach rolling and the literal physical pain of heartache, and through searing desire and hot shame and cold armoring, and then softening and softening into the safety of the earth herself holding me as I opened and tested my new edges. I had to have nightmares and feel my limbs purge the energy in pulsing, sick, rolling pain. I had to dance again and feel delicious excitement and joy moving through me, and remember how that felt. I had to remember my in this lifetime primordial animal body and the joy of being in it. And as we move into evolution through joy after, after the evolution through suffering touching bottom paradigm is fully understood and loved and integrated, we find that we need the body, that we want the body, that all of the grief and rage and collapsing and rising and sense making and clearing up of the rubbish from the past was for something. It was for the body to be present and alive in the moment, for us to feel what it's like to be alive while we're alive. If the four who are one taught me to die and not die, the body is here to teach me how to live. The body has its own intelligence, and my body tells me I am meant to be shoulder to shoulder, and heart to heart, and forehead to forehead, and hand to hand, and back to back, and legs and arms twisted together. All the positions. With maturity and with all the body saying yes, I consent, I turn towards, I agree, I surrender. The body is how life moves through us, and my body is how love moves through me. And I want to love big enough and have the capacity to bear that big love and have the capacity to know that everything will live and die and everything passes. My body and love also have to be strong enough to stand for something, and I do. There's nowhere else to go. There's nothing else to do. I am here, I am here, I am here. Now, here are my voice notes from the hot springs day. They say the same things, I think, but not with this new frequency, this new knowing in my bones, the thing that was returned to me, the thing that was gifted to me when I held and felt and freed that little girl who had been holding that pain of it not being okay to love this big. Another dimension of my body is revealed and available and in relationship to all of the other me's now. Okay, that's it. Please enjoy the rest of the podcast. Thanks for listening. I am coming to you today from the truck. It is another road trip episode. And today I am driving back from my favorite hot springs in the whole wide world. It's about a 2.5 hour drive from my house, and it's worth every mile. And sometimes I have to come here just to force myself to take a day off and think about other things besides the things that I always think about. And it's always fruitful when I stop and turn away from the screens and from things that capture my attention and like deep dive into a book or some writing or some thinking. And I decided that I wanted to record the next episode in the Sex, Love, and Other Drugs series. Part 2 from the road. So, in this episode, I want to deconstruct kind of what I did in the first episode. I don't know how it felt to you guys, but in the first episode, what it felt like was this unearthing of a lot of shadow material. It was kind of like a confessional. Like these are the things and these are the ways and this is my belief system, my constructs, what I thought. This is the messiness. There's lots and lots of messiness. And just speaking it into the world, looking at it as per usual, seems to be like 80% of shadow work. And so it helped. It helped me to talk about it, to look at it. And I've been with it very deeply since then. Partially because I'm dating. And it's terrifying and horrible. And like surprisingly wonderful. Who knew? It's a whole new world out there. Because it's a whole new world in here. This episode is going to be about seeing the other side of the coin in terms of who I am and how I approach love relationships and what I've learned in this last little entrance back into the world of dating and relationships. I don't know. One thing I want to do is get rid of the pathology in this episode. Like, yeah, I'm sure that multiple different DSM designations exist for how I operate and how I've historically operated in the world of relationships. Yep. And also there's a world beyond the pathology in DSM, right? Like, what are we trying to get to? Perfect stasis? Perfect normality? What I'm aiming for is health and taking care of myself and taking care of other people, causing as little harm as possible, bringing as much goodness as I can, respecting my boundary, respecting other people's boundaries, and also not like squashing my innate blueprint, like who I really am at my core with all of these things. So there's the paradox, the both and pathology and it's like a natural expression and flowering of who I am as a human, and maybe parts of it are okay, like if I'm respecting myself and other people and watching those boundaries, my own and other people's boundaries, and I get to love as deeply and as big as I want, and I get to experience like pleasure, connection, intimacy in a way that's safe for me and another person. That's what I'm playing with, that edge, because I've historically been kind of an all or nothing person. Like it's all on the table or I'm shutting it all down, one or the other. It's kind of like addiction, actually, because part of these aspects of relationship and love, I have felt like I felt addiction. It's this cascade of brain chemicals that all of a sudden feels like I'm out of control. And the thing about this is that it doesn't really work for me to fully shut it down. I can quit drinking. I can never have a drop of alcohol again. It's like eating, you got to eat. And I have to love. And I really value intimacy and connection and sex. So how do I find like the thread through this that holds my own integrity, allows me full expression of who I am, and also does the least harm possible to myself and others? Yeah. Okay, so the way that I've been dating is I went on the dating apps. Getting onto the apps has been interesting, and at first I was very scared, because the last time I was on the dating apps, which was like 2017, maybe 2016, 2017, I was still a hot mess. Like I was barely sober. I was in a lot of trauma. I was just barely in therapy, and it was not great. Yeah, it was just like messy and too fast, and there was none of the like ethics and boundaries and all of those things that I'm talking about. It wasn't great. It wasn't good for me. And so with great trepidation, I downloaded dating apps and put them on my phone and made a small profile and then waited to see what would happen. And what actually happened is that I am 44 years old and I'm connecting with other 40-somethings, and we're all a lot more grown up. Most of us are a lot more grown up than we used to be. It's like a different world dating in your 40s. People have kids. People have grown kids. People have things to lose. And so it's a completely different experience. And I have gone on a few dates, connected with a few people, and it's been really surprising in the best way. Like the first date that I went on, the guy was we had a nice dinner, whatever. We both got completely exhausted during our dinner, which I think is, indicative that it's probably not going to work out. And the next morning he texted me and said, I had a really nice time with you. I didn't feel the thing. But, I hope we can stay friendly or whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Samesies. And it was so nice. It was there was no ghosting. There was no weirdness. There was no it was just very straightforward and lovely. And I know this sounds probably like dating 101 to a bunch of people, but this is new for me to have a level of maturity and conversation and all of that. So that's just been my experience over and over. I've kind of ended things the same way with people that I have been involved with for just a few dates, and it's not great. Like, I get connected to people very, very quickly. So it's still a little bit difficult, but there's so much clarity, maturity, you know? So anyway, it's been surprising and great. And the other thing I'll say is, like, holy God, there are so many attractive, kind, like seemingly have their shit together men in the world. And actually, like, part of this is that part of the strangeness of this for me is that there are, like, these really beautiful men arising in front of me. Like, oh my God. Even ones that, like, the majority that I swipe left on because I can see that there's going to be, you know, like, they want to have kids, or their religious or political beliefs are so far opposite of mine that I'm not going to waste anybody's time. Like, they're still just these really lovely men. And it's been really good for me to date and then not try to get married as Cancerians are wont to do. It's like, all right, when are we moving in together? And part of it is the way that I live. Like, I live in a small house. I live in my dome. I'm not leaving, and I'm not inviting someone to live with me anytime soon. So it necessarily creates this probably really good boundary of getting to know somebody slowly, and it's lovely. You know, the other thing is, I think that I'm having a different experience with dating because I'm different. I mean, I think that that's actually all of it. Like, I'm a different person. I'm putting out a different vibe. And so I am attracting different kinds of people. And I'm learning to trust that. And I'm learning that I have healed a lot. And I know what a boundary is. And, like, I've done some work. And I'm much safer in these spaces than I've been in the past. So it does seem to be like a mirror of what I have done is being reflected back to me in the quality of men that I'm interacting with. All of that to say, like, yes, it's been lovely. It's been rosy. It's been a lot of fun. And also, it's been, like, completely terrifying. It's so scary. And I can see it on both sides. We're both like, here's the thing that I like, and here's who I am. Do you like the thing? Do you like who I am? You know, everybody on the apps basically are, we're all just looking for somebody to, like, do stuff with. It's like, this is who I am, and I would like to do those things with you. Would you like to do those things with me? It's so vulnerable and amazing and terrifying. It really is. We're in our 40s, dude. This is not our first rodeo, those of us dating in our 40s. So we're aware of the pitfalls. Like, I'm aware. I'm very proud of myself. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to, like, open up to love again. So it's been terrifying, and it's also been, like, really pleasurable. You know, it feels good to feel those feelings in your body. It feels good for me to feel those feelings in my body that I haven't felt in a long time, and, like, feel the flirtation and attraction and all of that, and try not to lose my mind. And a couple of times I have lost my mind with it. You know, the cycle happens, the, like, obsession or the limerence. There's a psychological term for you. Oh, God, I'm not a fan of that term because it hits so close to home. So what I've been trying to do is deconstruct from the negative parts of that and really watch myself closely. Like, are you projecting an entire personality and future onto this person because they have a nice face and they like you back? Yeah, sometimes I am. And it's not good. And I really can see people. I really do believe that. I again, am a projector in human design. We have, like, a penetrating aura, and we can really, really see people. And I love people. And I see people's best qualities. I can see people's inner children. I can see the inner child, and I'm like, oh, look at that. Look at that, like, core little flower of innocence at the center of all of us, and we're all just trying to get our needs met. And it's not like oh, how cute. It's like I see the beauty. I really see the beauty in us, and I fall in love very easily, and I don't want to lose that. I'm consciously deconditioning from the fact that that's a bad thing, if I can hold it in the space of like ethics and boundaries, and making sure that that I'm not in an addictive chemical cascade response based on someone's face and if they like me, So there's a lot of nuance and a lot of like feeling my way through and making sure that I'm grounded. And I've lost myself a couple times, and it's been okay. I've lost myself. I watch myself lose myself, and then I find my feet again, and I find the ground again, and then I try again. So I don't know how long I've been doing this, 6 months maybe not that long. And I've gone on 3 or 4 dates. So I'm not moving super fast. I'm learning a lot. And what it's brought up a couple times, I will say this, that what it's brought up a couple times when I have kind of lost my mind a little bit and the fantasy takes over and I'm not seeing the person, I'm seeing my projection of the person, which maybe we always do anyway, right? Like, I don't know these people. We've barely met, and I construct an entire story about them. And even though I try not to do that, it's just part of, I think, what we do as humans, and it's part of what I'm really good at. And so when that kind of fantasy falls apart or breaks open, or it's not reciprocated, or, whatever it is, or it like burns bright and hot and fast, and then it burns out, which has happened, which was like a really wild, fun ride, and I wouldn't trade it, but it was like intense, and it didn't, it of course didn't have staying power. So when it falls apart, what I feel is this part of myself, this young part of myself. I don't know actually why this part of myself, I don't know how this part of myself got that way. I've done so much work around this, and I really have never been able to find like a core source of this. But part of me feels really unsafe and really wants the safety of a relationship. And what I've realized deeply over the last couple of months is that what I want, this kind of fantasy that I have, that I'm going to find a person who's going to meet all my needs, and then it's just going to be like cuddle puddle, loves and kisses and good feelings and, happy faces forever and ever and ever. That fantasy, and then I'll always be safe, and somebody will always see me, and I won't feel alone, and all of those things. That fantasy does not exist. And I really had to come to terms with that. And it's a very, very deep core sense of unsafety, so that when I'm approaching the reality that what I think that I want and need does not exist, that part of me gets very, very panicky and starts looking around like, oh fuck, there's no ground, there's nobody that's going to save me, there's nobody that's going to rescue me. I've done so much work around this, so now it's like, it's not surface level, I have so much awareness of it, it's this very deep, deep down piece that sees that still thinks that it's possible, still thinks that it's what it needs and wants. And, as I'm realizing that it's not possible through meditation, and having realizations that nothing is unchanging, like there are no unchanging things. It's not possible to have this fantasy that it's never going to change and it's just always going to be good. And it's not possible that it's going to fix all these problems that I think it's going to fix. And so approaching that reality feels like, to this part that is clinging to that desire and that need, gets really, really panicky. And what it feels like is approaching an event horizon where I don't know what's going to happen on the other side. I don't know what's going to happen on the other side of me accepting the reality that this thing that I think that I really need and want actually does not exist. It feels terrifying and groundless. And if I admit that, then what? Then there's nothing. That's what this part is thinking. It's like, well, then there's, like, I'm not safe, and I'll never be safe, and I won't be caught and held. And I'm familiar with this sensation and reaction because I've had it 104 million times, like as I decondition from all the things. And this fear comes up like, oh, if I let go here, am I going to be caught? The question is like, is the universe ultimately loving or not? Is the universe on our side or not? And is there like this core benevolence or not? Like, is this all made of love or not? It's a really big question. Because if not, whoa, the fucking terror. And the only way to know is like to let go and see if we're caught. Which I've done a million billion times. And so I know how to do this, and I know how to approach the scary thing, and I know how to cross the event horizon. I know how to let go. And it's easy to say all of these words that are coming out of my mouth, but the actual experience of it means getting really quiet and sitting with the part of me that's terrified. And when I do that, almost immediately the terror turns into grief. And then I have to sit with the grief. And then I'm reminded that all of these, like all of the running, all of the negotiation, all of the trying to control, all of those things just come from a place of not wanting to feel the feeling, not wanting to feel whatever feeling is coming up, and the feeling that's coming up is grief. It's like, oh, I can't have the thing that I think I want or need, even though that thing doesn't actually exist. It does not. So that's been a part of the journey as well, and a really deep one. And it goes back to all of my work around death and letting go. And it's all death practice. It's all like, oh, actually, I don't have control over this. And the way to get my needs met or get what I want is not by manipulating, controlling, grasping, holding on to. It just doesn't work that way. And so the letting go happens, and I let go, and I let go, and I let go, and I see if I'm caught. And that is death practice. It turns out I'm caught over and over and over again. But the part that feels scared continues to feel scared at every one of these thresholds. And I hold ultimate compassion for that. All right. I'm going to drive a little bit and think a little bit and come back with the rest of this. Okay, continuing on. So through this process, I had to meet myself and meet the grief that has come up around the undeniable fact that I will not get what I think that I want because it does not exist. So some deep deconditioning there, some deep shadow work. And around that, really seeing how when I project my idea of someone, like, or project an ideal onto someone, that I'm not with that person. Like, I'm not with the person at all. I've already decided who they are and what they're like and what they will be like. And the reality is that I don't know that person, and they're standing in front of me. And if I've projected all of these things onto them, then I can't be present with them. And so also paying a lot of attention to that, working really hard to not build up a story, not fill in any gaps that are open just because I don't know somebody yet. And then letting it unfold and be curious about them, which is to say, trying not to project something onto people when we first meet. It's embarrassing that I have to do these things, but here we are. So I've been changing it from like, I'm going to meet a man I'm going to meet a person. Like, who is this person? I'm curious. And I've been kind of successful with that. And it's been really fun. It's actually been like, over the few months, dating has gone from something really stressful and seeming like full of pitfalls and dangers, and it's transformed into something that's like, I am really looking forward to meeting a human, and I'm very curious about people and want to get to know who they are. So that's really shifted it for me, and it's changed the stakes quite a bit as well. And even though I'm doing that, trying not to create a story, have limerence, all of those things, once again, I am someone who loves very easily. And instead of me seeing that as a liability, I am choosing now to see that as an asset and as something that I don't want to lose. I want to fall in love with people easily, whether it's romantic partners or whether it's friends. I am delighted by humans. I know we're all a hot mess, and I know that like it's not great what's happening right now on the planet, and we have a lot of work to do, but I really, really do love humans, and I want to love them, and I want to fall in love with them. It's such a beautiful thing to connect with another human being, and I'm delighted by them. So I don't want to lose that. And I think that I can do that as long as I don't blow up my life, right? Which is what I've done in the past. As long as I don't completely lose myself in that love, completely lose my mind with it, then I don't want to restrict it. If it's not hurting me and it's not hurting them, I'm experimenting. I'm testing it out. Is it okay for me to be in love? I want to. I hope it's okay. And in the times that I've erred on the side of too much too soon, even recently, that I've erred on the side of like being in love with a person, that even when I've erred on that side too much too soon, what it does is bring me to heartbreak really quickly. And that's not a bad thing. I'm getting used to the fact that something can end and it doesn't have to shatter my world. And is this possible after talking to someone for like 2 weeks? That I can build up this love for someone, and then when it ends, it shatters my world? Yes. Yep. That's part of who I am. So I'm learning that like, yeah, I can love, I can kind of surrender to this. I can feel big feelings. And also I can hold my center so that I don't fall apart when things fall apart. And that feels really good, and I like it, and I'm going to keep trying. All of this has been an experience of being really alive and feeling really alive in my body in a way that I haven't in a while. And I know that all of the work that I've done with grief, all of the work that I've done with being able to bear the suffering, to accept the reality on the planet, to accept like, yep, suffering exists. This is what happens here. To accept the reality that I'm not going to get what I think I want, that thing, that I desperately, desperately want. Could be anything. It just happens to be like this fairy tale, unrealistic love. And it's not that love is unrealistic, or it's not that me having a beautiful relationship is unrealistic. It's that it will not change and it will solve everything. That's the unrealistic part. And I think we all have some version of that, some deep, deep wound that it's like, if I could only X, then I would, Y and Z. If I could only have this thing, then everything would be perfect. It's a very human thing to do that. It's such a human thing to do that like 3,000-year-old spiritual lineages and traditions talk about how not to fall into that trap. It's a very human thing. So grace, right, and compassion and understanding for ourselves going through these very tender and difficult things. And so bearing the reality of life as it is, and the grief that comes with that, the utter grief that comes with that like has cracked me open, and that now I have a container for and capacity for, is the same capacity that I'm now applying to the love and the joy and the bliss that is arising when I'm in connection. Like, I want to love, I want to feel, and I think that's okay. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try. I'll let you know if it all falls apart. It's an alive bleeding edge in my life, and I have the strength and capacity to approach it again. So, sex, love, and other drugs. Yeah. It's not without danger. It is not without danger. It's not without the danger of me hurting myself or someone else. It's not without the danger of me potentially, being in terrible pain, terrible heartbreak again. I mean, that is the promise almost of love, is that it's going to break our hearts. And somewhere in the center of that, somewhere in like the center of that duality is life. And how much of life can we bear? How much of life can we bear moving through our bodies? Life herself moving through us. And evolution through joy comes into this as well. Like, is it safe for me to feel joy? Is it okay for me to feel like bliss and desire and excitement and all the fun stuff that I really shut down because it felt so unsafe before? I don't know. It's as unsafe as suffering. I don't know if life is safe. I just think that our capacity grows to be able to handle it, to handle the reality of life. And I can feel when I'm in trouble, when I am falling for somebody and it's not going to be the thing. And there's the heartache and the aliveness, and I wouldn't trade it. And I think that's courageous. Cut to me like crying in a puddle on the floor in 6 months. We'll see. I don't know. In 6 years, in 60 years. Like, someday there will be loss. It's coming. And I can handle that too. Or it'll break me. And I can handle being broken. You know? I don't know, guys. This is just me giving myself a big old pep talk about love. But it's cool because you know how oriented I am towards the body and towards feeling alive in the body. And it is the body that's driving this. It is the body that's driving this this need for connection. It's a very human thing to do. So again, I'm giving myself some grace around it. So that's it. That's all. There you go. Pour out my damn heart once again. Hope that you can hear me and hope that you find something here that is useful for your life. And until next time, my friends. Oh, and one more thing. So the last or the first episode of Sex, Love, and Other Drugs that I did, I ended that episode asking the question, like, when do I tell them about the aliens? And I have an answer to that question. It's never. Just kidding. It's right away. It's right away. People ask. And then I'm like, well, and if we've talked and if there's some resonance and they really seem curious, like, here is my podcast. Maybe good luck. Maybe I'll never see you again. But what has happened is that if it's gotten to the point in the conversation that somebody's truly curious about, the podcast and my work, they unfailingly have listened to, at least a few episodes, and then they tell me their story of the weird, of the anomalous. Like, it just opens doors, just like it's done in so many other areas of my life with new friends and connections from all over the world. And so it's been coming out of the anomalous paranormal experiencer closet continues to be a soft landing. So when to tell people about the ETs? This is just my life, not prescriptive, but yeah, right away. Jumping off cliffs left and right, people. Thank you to Morgan Jenks for our beautiful musical soundscapes. Thank you to my patrons who support this podcast and my work. And thank you to all the beautiful men in my life. You know who you are. If you'd like to learn more about my work or book a one-on-one session with me, please visit honeyheart.net.